Why hasn't technology just killed the 6% commission, folks? We're going to talk about the traditional model where the selling individual pays a selling agent 3% and a buying agent 3%. We have been hearing for years, if not over a decade, that tech was going to eat into that, and we were going to see that all go away. We'll talk about where we are today, what might be coming, and why it has been a struggle for tech to go after this. Dana, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Somebody that's deep in the technology space and real estate space. You've developed Hemlane, which has really allowed property manager, mom and pop property managers, out of state, accidental landlords to dominate their market. But one of the things I've often thought about is why hasn't tech been able to successfully go after this low hanging fruit of this traditional 6% commission? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I think at a high level, and I'm comparing property management against to the buy sell market. If you look at the property management space, 72% of rentals are not using a traditional broker, like someone licensed broker or agent to manage the property. And so from our perspective and our innovation, it's like, great, we'll provide tools, offer that for them. But there's also a subset of people who say, hey, I really want to be passive. I really do want you to connect me to a local agent or broker. So us on the property management side, I think we have been able to innovate and really power technology that truly gets you out of the day-to-day, in part just by the nature of what percentage of rental owners are thinking about using an agent or not. And it works into our favor with that 72%. It's different with the buy sell, because if you've looked over time, and we've had not only 15 years of innovation, maybe you could argue more, 15 years of tech companies trying to disintermediate the broker. But on top of that, huge VC rounds. And so you can't argue that it was like, oh, they didn't have enough money to do it.
No, you can't argue that.
Behemoth amounts of money. But the difference with it is that if you look at how many people use a broker or agent to buy their home or sell their home, it's 98%. Majority are, it's only a sophisticated subset of users, of sellers and buyers who are not. And so from that perspective, all these companies have gone in, tried to do it. Have some of them been successful? Yes, in certain ways. Have they also blown up and spent a lot of money? Absolutely. But I think the lesson learned is like, hey, did they have the right teams in place? Probably. They hired really freaking smart people. This is at, OfferPad, Open Door, Zillow. They hired smart people to do it. They had the capital to do it. But that 6%, to your point, they're still not able to get around that. And so we're almost back now, and especially with the pullback in venture capital dollars on innovation in industries, we're almost back to saying, okay, everyone, just continue to use an agent to buy a property and sell a property.
It's really interesting to me because, again, we also had this lawsuit that came out against NAR, right? National Association of Realtors, kind of basically saying, the traditional model of 3 and 3 is no longer good. It's always been negotiable, but I guess it was just set as a standard. So there's the NAR lawsuit as well. But when I think about what you've successfully done at Hemlane, and then I think about mirroring that to the buy sell model, I think you pointed at one of the things that's really valid is in the property management space, nearly 3/4 of mom and pop landlords don't have something, and they frankly need something, right? Communication, audit trail, lawsuits. It's just like, you can't do this with, a phone, right? You need a system, and having it available on your phone, smartphone is extremely valuable. So you've unlocked something. And oh, by the way, if you have a rental or an accidental landlord, you have, if not weekly, certainly monthly communication. So the volume of communication is much higher. When you think about the buy sell model, the last time I checked, the average person buys 2 homes in their entire life, right? It's like 2 point something. So let's round it to 3. And, that's just not a lot of transactions, right? You don't get good at it. You don't learn, right? You do one in your 30s, one in your 50s, and, maybe one later. And it's just like, That's why you need help. And also you also have mortgage, you also have debt. So you have
Mhm.
this third party involved that has that's giving you money, and then the asset is insured. So they have to have their, they have to be protected, right? You can't do a bad deal or have disclosures that aren't good. It's just a much more complex thing. And the last
Mhm.
thing I'll kind of talk about here is I think tech, and certainly the VCs, they got enamored with just doing math, right? 6% times, a gazillion dollars. That's a lot of money we can go get. But they
Yeah.
didn't step back and go, oh, that's a lot of transactions. And oh, by the way, every state is different. And, there's lenders involved. And sometimes VCs get a little too excited by running math, and they don't live in the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's that of the math, and hate's a large market. There hasn't been innovation in the space. And then also, you've had it where they've said, hey, let's just try to cut that fee. So instead of 3%, let's go to 2%
Mm-hmm.
or 1.5% for a certain part of it.
Yeah.
And one thing is, it's like if you are selling your home, and maybe it's not if it's a cookie cutter, like I think, where I saw a lot of the innovation of like the offer pads and the open doors was in these cookie cutter areas where all the houses were this
They were the
looked
same.
exactly the same.
Yeah.
It was very easy to price them because you knew exactly how much the one down the street went for last
Right.
week. But if you look at every other market, which is most markets, you go to Denver or Boston, every single house is somewhat unique.
Yep.
And the chances of one next door being sold within the same time frame is very rare. And so then what a seller does is they basically say, and we can talk about the buyer side afterwards, but if I'm a seller, my point is like, hey, that 3%, my agent should make it up. And I'm going to use the agent in the area who everyone else uses, or who I know is going to give me an unfair advantage of what's going on and how to get the best price. And as a seller, to your point, if you're only doing it 2 times in your life, you're not going to take that chance of doing it yourself.
Yeah.
So that's on kind of the seller side. And then on the buyer side, it's just the biggest purchase that you're ever going to make, trying to do it on your own, being very worried from everything from the disclosures and making sure there's some review of that, to having an agent who will be thinking of you and keeping you in mind. That's super important as well.
Yeah, and that's where I think tech got it wrong. At least their initial swag at the 6% is they tried to go get the 6% without going, let's go talk to the buyer or sellers, right? Or let's talk to the buyer side and the seller side. Because what I've seen happen recently, which I think was some success, was, these fixed rate listing brokers, right? Instead of 3% to list, it's 1% or 1.5%. But what they've done is they've controlled the cost side of that, because one of the things is you can't be a full service broker at 1%. But you can take pictures, you could put it in the MLS, you could hold maybe one open house, right? So you can create like an ingredient list. Hey, if you want to pay 1% listing fee, these are the 7 things you get. You want to do 1.5%, you get 2 more. You want to do full service, 3%, you get all of these things.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for me on the listing side, because that feels more, it just feels more structured, right? There's one asset, that's the asset. On the buyer side, it's like, okay, even if you are a buyer and you have what I talk about being a buy box, that's still dozens of properties, and it takes time and review, and it's just a whole nother ball of wax. So I think tech going after the listing side kind of makes sense first, because it's more defined, at least in my world. I think the buy side, I think the buy side's next.
Yeah, and it's interesting because until now, I don't think I've ever seen a tech company go after just the sales side, with potentially the case of Redfin doing it with their agents saying, "Hey, there's a 1 or 2% there." I brought up, Michael, earlier today the point of like, hey, if I'm going to sell this, I want to make sure I get max dollar, and I don't want to chance it with a bad agent. How do you feel about that? Of like, hey, we're just going to take out that agent. Do you think sellers will still do it? And do you think that we'll get to mass market, or where do you see the future of it going?
Well, again, I think one of the things that when you step back and you talk to real estate agents are going to have to get really good at selling their value. And, to your earlier point, if you're living in a community of 500 homes and there's only 3 models, sounds like a fixed price listing to me, right? Because they're all the same. However, if you're in most of the country and, over on that side of the street, it's new builds, and over here is 1950, and over there is a war zone, and, all of that, maybe a full service broker is worthwhile. So I think the selling side commission, where if it may have averaged 3% for a decade, I think if tech got involved and they did it profitably by creating a list, you could get that down to 1.5 probably. But it's again, it's up to the agent to sell their value, right? Because if you walk in like Beth Traverso, a top 1% agent that comes on my channel every Tuesday, she's going to come in because she works in Kings County. They don't have cookie cutter stuff, and I think their median price is 1.4 million.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to sit there and potentially risk $100,000 by going with some fixed rate listing agent, right? This is the only thing you've owned. It's the key to your future. And yeah, you're going to pay a couple of points to get the, top 1% agent. So, I think it's, it's up to the seller, but agents, this is a big thing with agents coming out of this, depression, is they got to be better at communicating their value. I think too many of them got lazy, stick a sign in the yard, take iPhone pictures and call it a day. It's not where we are anymore.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's when you hear agents who just don't know keeping their pulse on everything in the market, days on market. Hey, we're going to have at this point, this is where it is. We really need to get this off market in 2 weeks, or else it's going to look bad and much more like something that can be heavily discounted. I do agree with that. Well, I think it's the most exciting time for real estate tech is, one, we're not in a frothy market like we were in from 2010 to 2020. I think that was too frothy. So it was almost easier for these companies to raise a ton of VC capital and then do something that didn't actually work in a down cycle or a change in a market. Right now we're at a great point for innovation in it, because it's like, hey, argue it's somewhere in the middle. I think Resi Club came out with, is it a seller or a buyer market? It's basically that what their argument was neutral there. And so it's a good time to experiment with this. The VC capital is going to the AI models. And so it's a good time to say prop tech is only going to have investment, but only so much, which is great, because when you are constrained, you actually have to quickly figure out if
that's where innovation comes from. When money is like, I've seen this so many times in the .com era and now again, right? When money's free, lots of bad ideas get, and sometimes the same idea gets funded multiple times in multiple rounds. It's just like, what are you guys doing? There's nothing here. But in a tight market where, there is a dominant horse, AI in this case, the extra capital that's going to go to prop tech is going to have to be dished out very purposefully. And it should be fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm actually excited for it. I also think, you brought up the NAR lawsuit. I think all of this stuff is kind of shifting and having these really meaningful conversations of, what do organizations do? What does my agent broker do? Where can we potentially make changes? And so I just think it's a really exciting time on the buy-sell side. Of course, I'm on the property management side, but I think the buy-sell side lends its way a lot to innovation that we'll see. So I'm excited about it all.
Yeah, well, the other thing I'll throw in here as we wrap this up, the other thing that I think is going to 100x over the next 5 to 10 years is fractional real estate investing. And with the blockchain and all of that, and I think innovation is coming to the buy sell side, certainly to the ownership side with fractional investing. I've talked to Real Brick a couple of times, and it's gonna be fun to watch. Dana, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Hemlane, HEMLANE.com. We do property management, but also if you just want to email me, Dana@Hemlane.com. I love, as Michael will tell you, I love answering questions. I love talking about property management. Most people don't, but I do. So would love to hear from you if you have any questions.
You're amazing. And don't forget to go to Hemlane.com/resources. They got a lot of stuff there for accidental landlords. Regional based, local stuff, folks, go check them out, Hemlane.com. Thank you so much.